real quick, I have a couple things that I want to show and tell. I bought this like tank turret, so that's an onslaught cannon, and I'm going to magnetize it so it can have like a plasma cannon, and then just a regular like gigantic tank barrel that looks kind of cool. Hopefully, do some kit bashing with that.
Nice.
Sorry,
is that for your Triceratops tank?
Potentially.
Awesome.
Because I want to get to a what you see is what you get state with my Triceratops. I'm just going to show the main weapon for that. So the main weapon's pretty similar. This is what goes on top of the Triceratops. It's a dual Gatling cannon. There's also dual plasma. These are all custom pieces. And I'm actually going to lop the barrels off of each one of them and magnetize them so I can switch them out.
Excellent.
And then this is the head. It's pretty big. This is
nice.
Louise the Triceratops.
Did you name that after Louise from Bob's Burgers?
100%. And if I get the T-Rex that I'm looking at, it will be Tina.
Nice. All right. You want to intro us in?
Yes. Let's see. In the last 12 years, there has been a shocking few amount of games in the Star Wars IP between 2012 and 2015. There was no games released at all. I believe the order of release was in 2010. We had The Force Unleashed 2. 2011 was The Old Republic. 2015 was Battlefront, and then 2017 was Battlefront 2, and then a little bit after that we had Jedi Fallen Order. And so those are console and PC games, and then the only other games we had other than that were Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, which is a mobile game, and I want to say Star Wars Arena, which actually got shut down in that time frame as well. Needless to say, we are in a drought of Star Wars games.
Agreed.
Star Wars games, the first golden era of Star Wars games has come and gone. You used to get a game every 6 months, and they were bangers. Every single one of them were so good. Republic Commando, Empire at War, X-Wing, the original Battlefront 1, the original Battlefront 2.
Those were good games.
They were amazing. Knights of the Old Republic, Knights of the Old Republic 2. These are some of the best games ever made. And they're in the Star Wars IP. It was amazing. It was such a great time to be alive and such a great time to be a kid.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I played through.
Anyway.
I think I played through Knights of the Old Republic. I think I beat the game from start to finish like 13 times.
Yeah. It's good.
It's very good.
I mean, that's like, this is the kind of stuff why we made a podcast in the first place.
Absolutely.
We love video games. We love Star Wars. This is what we're here for. So we're going to be talking about Star Wars games this time around. Welcome to Talk About Tatooine. I'm Andrew.
I'm Nathan.
And we're twin brothers here to bring you what's new in nerddom and give colorful commentary on our favorite subjects. Welcome to our cantina. Grab a drink and settle in as we set course for realities beyond our own. It looks like we're hydro homies today. And I also wrote the note, Star Wars and hot chocolate. So as some of you listeners may know, we do record more than one episode at a time because we're adults with jobs. We don't get any money off of this podcast. We do it for funsies. And during the first episode, I was drinking a mug of hot chocolate. And in, I want to say it is the original Thrawn book, Heir to the Empire, Luke Skywalker is drinking hot chocolate, and he says that it's a drink that Lando gave him. So it's like this like cool person's like mocktail sort of thing. And I can't help but think, I'm like, Luke Skywalker, you are such a dork. You're a dork. I'm like, Lando is so cool. He would not like, maybe that is the kind of thing he would be like, yeah, hot chocolate's really cool. But also, I think he would like, he'd be like, oh yeah, and there's also like some spice in it.
Something to get you hooked.
Something to get you hooked, or like to imbibe on, not like what we would consider a child's drink, even though I totally rock hot chocolate all the time.
It's still good.
Still good.
As Andrew just said, we have been in a drought of games. The nice thing is there is a little there is a light coming up at the end of the tunnel for this, so we do have a lot of upcoming Star Wars releases. We're going to be talking about some of those today. Very, very excited about some of them myself. Some of them we've actually already referenced on previous episodes of this podcast, even though we just recorded this right previously because that's how we do this. I learned that's actually a really common thing for podcasters to do, is to record like several sessions all at once. They basically just like take a work day to knock it out, because by the time they get through editing and like having to redo takes and stuff, it literally can take people like 8 hours to do like 3 to 4 episodes of a show. And then they have to do all the editing on the backside. And I'm like, oh man, that's crazy. So I really appreciate, like, if you get a podcast that you really, really like and it seems seamless, that means people have probably put in roughly a 3-to-1 ratio of hours to content produced. So keep that in mind.
Honestly, that's where I feel like I'm at too. I put a lot of research and writing into these episodes. A lot of times I will nab my wife's laptop and while we're watching Bob's Burgers or whatever show we're currently on, and I'll start writing my notes and researching things and trying to create, cite my sources, make sure the info I'm reading isn't just like some rando on Twitter.
Yeah.
I want to make sure it's a credible rando.
Credible randos. Yes, we like those.
I want to talk a little bit real quick about why we're in a Star Wars drought. And this is going to be the classic
I've never
Star Wars. And it comes down to literally just one thing, and that is the license to create Star Wars game was given to one studio, EA, and they sat on it they did produce games. They produced Battlefront 1, Battlefront 2, Squadrons, and Fallen Order.
Mm-hmm.
That's 4 games, but they were all done by different subsidiaries except for Battlefront 1 and 2. Relatively, they did nothing with this IP. They basically sat on it and didn't do anything with it, and they missed out on creating these things. EA is not just one company. It is a conglomerate of multiple developers.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the resources to develop multiple Star Wars games at a time, and they chose not to. We're feeling that now. That's why we got Battlefront 1, which, remember, didn't have a campaign, didn't have PvE. We talked about the 4 things you look for in a game: a single-player campaign, a player versus enemy mode, multiplayer combat, multiplayer team versus team combat, and battle royale. Star Wars still doesn't have a battle royale.
Which they definitely could. Actually, the biggest producer of battle royale content in the Star Wars universe, or with a Star Wars skin right now, is Fortnite.
Oh my gosh.
Fortnite has the most Star Wars Battle Royale content right now, and that kills me. It also makes me want to play Fortnite again. But it
does. It makes me want to play Fortnite again. It would be easy. It's free.
Yeah, it is free. That's a bummer. The most Battle Royale content we have right now in the Star Wars universe is Fortnite. That is very true. The best, to be fair, it's the most played, it's one of the most played Battle Royale / shooter games like ever.
Because it's accessible.
Yeah, that game is absolutely just bonkers big. Even though a lot of people are like, oh, it's stupid. They went to the, you can choose between no build and build mode. So, all of those, toxic players you build in, where you, shoot them once, you tag them, and then they're like, poof, fortress. And you're like, oh, this isn't fun. And then they, snipe you from the top of the fortress because you didn't play at 600 actions per minute. So they took that out. So it's a lot more, again, accessible for a lot of players. But still kind of a bummer that that's the leading force of Star Wars shooters right now. I'll share this a little bit. I got locked out of my Battlefront 2 account. And I hate EA with everything that is inside of me. Because I tried to play it recently because it's a Star Wars game and it's a shooter. It's a fun game. And what happened is I registered, when it first came out, I registered it under an old email. I no longer have that address anymore. I went through every channel and every avenue. I went on to customer support 5 different times and none of them could help me. I said, hey, for some reason, you guys said I need to, they were like, oh, we resent the confirmation code to your email. You just need to verify your email address again. And I was like, okay, cool, whatever. Then I look at the email address. It's one of my old ones. Cool. I try to log on to it. It does not exist anymore because I deleted it several years earlier because I didn't think I used it for anything. I log into EA. I said, hey, I would like to play this game that I purchased. I cannot. The confirmation email you sent to this email no longer works. It's no longer exists. And so they're like, okay, we can help you. Prove that this is you. And so I gave them the information they asked for. And these are general things like date of birth and things like that. You're like, yeah, this stuff doesn't change.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we can't verify that this is you. And I went through this process 5 different times. EA customer support is also set up where if you fail that verification, you have to immediately start over the entire customer support process. So in these 5 different calls, this isn't just oh, I got one person. It's going through this process, this loop 2 or 3 times before I finally just hung up and gave up. So by the time I had finished this, I had gone through this process roughly 12 to 15 times. And I've just gone to the point where I'm like, I'm never going to play Battlefront 2, the most recent release of it, because they locked me out of my account. It's connected to my gamer tag. So I would have to get a new gamer tag to play, even though my EA account is no longer linked to that email. The Star Wars Battlefront was, and I can't play anymore because EA is garbage. And I hope they hear this. I hope the CEO watches this. You're a piece of garbage. I don't like you. I'll never see it. Or she. Who knows? It's 2022. Is it 2022? Yeah, it is. Forgot what year it was there for a second.
For a little bit more, it is, yeah.
For a little bit more. So that's kind of my biggest issue, is because EA basically sat on their IP for so long, and they have so many bad business practices that they're just like ruining the franchise. I don't know about you, but Star Wars Squadrons was a huge letdown.
Yes, it was.
It was just straight up not fun.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it for whatever reason. And I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for whatever reason, it came a little bit more instinctually for me than it did for you.
Oh, I was bad at it. I was real bad.
I was pretty good. I usually would finish all of my games in a positive KD, not like 6-1 or whatever. It was like 2-1. I was happy with that trade-off.
Mm-hmm.
That trade-off wins games. But I did realize that my friends didn't like it, and if my squad doesn't like it, I don't like it.
And I mean, we played this like the day it launched. Like the week it launched, we all had it. I remember I left for work that day. I had it downloading on my console, and when I came back that day, it was ready to go. So we jumped on it, and there was like 24 hours where we were like, this is awesome. Everyone's on the same skill level, blah, blah, blah. And there was just like 1,000 like hyper nerds who just like played for 48 hours straight. And then there was this huge skill imbalance, and like they had put in the time to unlock all these extra ships. I couldn't even get to the point where I was like unlocking all the extra equipment. Like, how was I supposed to progress the game when I was just like getting roasted every single fight? It was just this really weird, out of control, like skill imbalance, and they didn't do a great job at matchmaking. They just put everyone in the same circle. Like you weren't matched against people against similar skill types. So you never really had a chance to improve. If you got put in a match with somebody that was way above your league, you were just like, cool, like just uninstall the game now. It's going to be faster.
Yeah, it was a huge letdown, especially considering like the trailers were better than the sequel movies. I mean, they looked awesome.
Oh, beautiful trailers.
They were gorgeous. So obviously the hype was through the roof. And I'm going to talk about trailer hype in our segment later because someone's putting up an order that they can't fulfill. Maybe. We'll see. It looked awesome, and it just really kind of fell flat. Okay, that's Star Wars games in the past. We're going to talk about Star Wars games moving forward.
Future.
It's
a bad Squidward impression on my part, but a few of you will get it, and that's what matters.
That's all that matters.
Really, really excited about the future of Star Wars gaming. There is some really, really, really cool stuff coming down the pipeline as far as Star Wars games.
We are potentially looking at a new golden era of Star Wars games. That is the level of, because the exclusive license to Lucasfilm Games IP is no longer just in the hands of EA. Anyone can, obviously with a contract, can use it. And because of that, we have, 6 or 7 games in development right now?
We've got quite a few, yeah. Why don't you take us through our first one?
So the first one, which I know we just did an episode on mobile gaming, but we're going to talk about a mobile game coming out. But it's sort of a mobile game. Star Wars Hunters, which was supposed to be released already and has not been.
Well, caveat there is it's released in other parts of the world because they're play testing it in other regions before they let it go into the bigger markets, which the bigger market for gaming is the United States. There's not as many people, but that's also where the money is at.
Right. It is they're not really calling it this, but it's an open beta. It's not available to us unless you have a VPN. Basically spoof your IP address and you can pretend you're in Indonesia, which is one of the countries that it's released in.
Pretty much. I thought about it.
But this is going to be an arena shooter, so something like Overwatch 4v4, and it's coming out on Android, Apple, and Switch. So this is one of the first opportunities that we've seen where mobile is crossing over with a console. Granted, it's not like the Xbox or PlayStation or even PC, but the Switch is considered a console. It's the lowest powered console, but it's still a console. It looks great. I wish it was already out. I'm upset that it's not out. But I mean, 2 episodes ago, we ripped Halo a new b-hole because they released a game that wasn't ready. So it's not really fair for me to also give this to pile on the same hate for Star Wars Hunters because that would be hypocritical.
There are some mixed reactions about that same topic on Twitter. So you actually tweeted something out earlier, and it was funny actually looking through. People do some really intense research for these games. So if you scroll down, even like the comments and the mentions on that tweet that Zynga originally posted,
I try not to read the comments.
So I do, because I like getting people's reactions, kind of getting an overall kind of barometer on how everyone is taking this news.
And I thought you were going to say I like reading people's comments because I hate myself.
No. Well, yes, but not. That doesn't manifest in that form. So, but the reaction seemed very mixed. A lot of people were saying that exact thing, was that they were excited that they were waiting, that the producers were waiting to release it because it wasn't ready yet. They didn't want it. They didn't want a game that was 75% complete and had to be like constantly updated, while also having those like freemium feature or like premium features that you can pay for. Like, again, you shouldn't have to pay for something if it's not ready yet. And so a lot of people were excited about that. Some people also tended to point out, again, these are the people who did the research, that the screenshot or the post that you had tweeted out is kind of the only bit of news we've gotten in a long time. And a lot of people were upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
And I get it. Like,
it's been quiet. It's been completely silent.
Mm-hmm. And
go ahead. I keep interrupting.
The hard part about that is these people aren't taking into consideration how much hype and how people are going to take any bit of news you put out there, and they're going to immediately speculate about and like generate all this hype. So if they're generating hype for a feature that might not even stay in the game, what's eventually and ultimately going to happen is you're going to lead to disappointment in your fan base. I know Mojang takes really good care to do this when they're releasing Minecraft updates, and that's why they do so many different patches and things, and kind of like let players play with those new patches, essentially, is because they don't want to hype something up and then cancel it at the last minute. They're always stating like, this is under development, this is temporary, like we don't even know if this is going to make the final cut, all these things. And
they're tempering our expectations.
Exactly. So, which again can make or break the game, especially when it launches in the US. That's going to determine whether or not this game is successful. And it's going to determine whether or not that game makes all the money back in development, is whether or not it launches successfully in places like the United States, Canada, Europe, countries with good player bases, but also players that have a little bit more money to spend as well.
I did watch some gameplay on Star Wars Hunters, so this is pretty much the last thing I want to say. It looks pretty rough. There's really not any way to sugarcoat it. The combat looks like garbage. I can't really see it lasting as long as they say they want it to if the combat stays where it is. But I mean, that's why it's been an open beta for a really long time for a lot of people. They are gathering a metric heck ton of data to make this game better, and I'm really crossing my fingers and hoping it's good. I don't know yet whether or not it's going to be free to play. Kind of hope it is.
It should be. I believe it is.
Their goal is to have a multiplayer game that is active for years. So potentially a longer lifespan than the most recent Battlefront 2, which was a multiplayer shooter.
Yeah.
So, and that was in the tweet I sent out. Those are their words. That's not me speculating. That is their goal.
I like those goals. Whether or not they're actually going to match up to them, we'll see. But I like the fact that they're wanting to extend that growth. They want to say, hey, we didn't get the playtime we saw that we wanted out of Battlefront 2. We're going to try to beat that with this next one. And I like it when producers stay competitive with themselves, because that means we ultimately get a better product, which means they in turn make more money off of them, and the producers are going to get rewarded for that. And if they make a good game,
there can be a positive feedback cycle with this. Things can work out for both the user and the developer. And we've seen in not just Star Wars games, but gaming in general, that's not always the case.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We've also got the sequel to Jedi Fallen Order coming out, and we've got Star Wars Jedi Survivor. I did not play through Fallen Order because, weirdly enough, I'm not good at that style of game. I had never played and grinded through Dark Souls or Elden Ring or anything like that. I played Jedi Survivor for maybe a week, and I died a lot. It did not go well for me. Again, as an adult who doesn't have a ton of time to get good at video games, especially different styles of video games, This one really did me dirty, so I'm not entirely enthused about the second one, but it's always kind of in the back of my mind. I do actually want to go into like the story with this because these
It's
games are
good.
very narratively driven, and I love that. That's going to give us more
It's a good
lore
story.
about Star Wars.
Lore.
I've been watching way too much game theory and stuff, but I love Matt Pat. He's great. He's the right amount of professionalness and silliness that I aspire to be. So
Yeah.
I'm like, you know what? You keep on going. Good for you, Matt Pat. I hope you watch this. That would actually make me so happy. But who knows? But I'm kind of excited about Jedi Survivor, and I'm almost looking forward to, once I get my office set up again, like actually playing through Fallen Order all the way through in anticipation of this event. It is on Xbox, which means I'm hoping to get all the achievements. And that would be a grind, but I think that's something I could potentially do. So I'm still a little bit excited about this. EA is really being tight-lipped about this, though. So again, apparently, like, the game is like already done. It's set to come out in 2023, but other than that, I don't know much about what's actually going to happen with this game.
I don't know what's going to go on with that one either. I did play it, and very much like you, I was not good at it. Again, I don't play Soulsborne type games. I prefer my games where you don't have to dodge as much. The closest thing to a Soulsborne game I played was Shadow of War, the Middle Earth game, where you play as a dude with the Wraith of Celebrimbor. Super fun. I really liked the advancement, the combat. Instead of being like, oh, there's lots of like elite enemies, it's very much so there's like just lots of enemies, and when you fight someone elite, it's really difficult. And you have to like
Absolutely.
find their weaknesses. It's a little bit more strategic, I guess, is what it is.
Those were such good games.
It's not quite a Soulsborne. It's more of an Assassin's Creed style game, and that I can do. But Soulsborne games are really tough for me. That being said, I probably will play Jedi Survivor Day One. The story for Fallen Order was too good for me. It was awesome. It was really fun. Like, I loved customizing my lightsaber. Cal Kestis is a really motivating character. He's very compelling in his story. I want to say the actor Caleb Monahan. He does a great job. I'm so glad he's cast forever in the Star Wars canon
Yeah.
because he's awesome.
As somebody who hasn't actually played through the entire game myself, what are like the things that like really make you enjoy Cal Kestis as a character?
He is, from a story perspective, he is just the right amount of powerful. You are not playing as this character that is so strong that you're basically playing another sequel to The Force Unleashed. He's matched against people that really make him work for it. So he fights the Inquisitors through the story, and they give him a run for his money. A lot of them are really difficult. But then at the very end, this game's been out for a while. I don't care about spoiling it.
Yeah,
Then at
spoil
the
it
end,
for me.
you
That's
face
fine.
off against. But at the end, you face off against Darth Vader, and he kicks the crap out of you. And you basically escape by the skin of your teeth, and it was one of the most thrilling gaming moments I can remember because like it really brought the terror and the power of how really strong Darth Vader is. And I remember when the Inquisitors were first introduced in the lore, I was like, who are these clowns? Why would Sidious and Vader have these people that could potentially threaten them? And then I see them interact. I was like, oh, they're not a threat at all to their power.
Absolutely.
They're so challenging when you fight against them as basically someone who is a Padawan who never finished his training. But when you actually fight against a Sith Lord, you're like, I'm gonna die. My only choice is I just have to run, 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 run.
Yeah. And that really tracks with like the Star Wars universe. So for all of you nerds out there, if we're thinking about the rule of two, the whole idea with this rule being established was that Darth Bane killed off the entire Sith Order with this like really cool thing called the Thought Bomb. Read that trilogy, listen to it if you can. Drew Kaparshan did a fantastic job on those novels. It is a novel series I've read multiple times, but the idea
100%.
is that Darth Bane said, we are shooting ourselves in the foot by having all of this infighting because that's essentially like the Sith are driven by ambition and violence, essentially. So what he did is he killed off everybody, killed a ton of Jedi in the process, too. Like they kind of just gloss over that, and you're like, oh, a lot of people died here. And
Yes.
then he takes one singular person as an apprentice, and that first apprentice is Darth Zana, who is a really, really cool character, gets involved in a little bit more of like
Yes.
Sith witchcraft and stuff, which is super
So
cool.
cool.
So cool.
Oh my gosh.
But
She's a
essentially,
witch!
she's a witch. But essentially, they get into the brass tacks of saying the job of the master is to teach the apprentice to become as strong as possible. And if the system works, then the apprentice becomes stronger than the master, kills the master, and then that apprentice becomes the master, right? Then it's their job to then get an apprentice and continue the cycle. So that way there's a power creep. So every new set of master and apprentice, we get more powerful Jedi. And this does track because we get to the point where Palpatine, who basically starts an entire galactic civil war, which arguably in its planning and its logistics is much more intense than just like throwing off a thought bomb, which is cool as a singular event. Not as maniacal as winning and orchestrating both sides of the galactic or of the Clone Wars. Sorry, I say galactic civil war.
And literally under the nose of the strongest Jedis to have ever lived.
Absolutely.
Like Yoda.
So really, really cool. And then he basically takes the strongest of the order that's ever lived, the chosen one, right? That's Anakin. And he's like, and we turn you to the dark side. So he's like, you have the strongest power pairing ever in the Star Wars universe. And then that just so happens to be what you're fighting against in Jedi Fallen Order. So it really makes sense of why you see that. I do have a little bit of a problem with the Inquisitors still because it kind of goes against the whole rule of two because now they have Sith underlings, but you also in practicality they're never apprentices. They are trained to the point where they're agents, just like you would have they're essentially just assassins at that point and just figureheads. Like they're not the Inquisitors never show themselves to be particularly like masterful of the use of the Force. You do get sometimes where they use the Force, but it's not to the same level where like you've got Starkiller ripping Star Destroyers out of the sky, or Darth Vader being able to manipulate the entire environment even though most of his limbs are actually gone, and like essentially the dark shroud of conspiracy that Palpatine was able to hold over while interacting with all of the Jedi. You know, like they were never able to actually sense that he had the Force in him because he was so good at what he did.
Yeah.
So,
well, and what's really ironic is the Inquisitors fall for the same weaknesses. They have the same foils as the original Brotherhood of Darkness. This is where Darth Bane came out of, and that they're so worried about gaining their own power that they're like constantly killing each other and attacking each other, and they're all going after that Grand Inquisitor spot. But the Grand Inquisitor is nothing compared to Vader.
Yeah.
Like they are all fighting to try to be top dog, and really they're rats among gods.
Doesn't the Grand Inquisitor die several times? Like there's several iterations of him in Star Wars canon, or is it all the same person? That's something
I
I'm a little
think
bit
it's the
confused
same
on.
guy. So he looks like he got killed in Kenobi, but then he like shows up at the last minute. He's for sure dead in Rebels.
Gotcha.
That's where he dies.
So
I think Kanan just goes kind of crazy and just totally whoops him.
Oh, such a cool ending. Oh, if you haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, make sure you guys watch that as well. That is some of the best Star Wars content ever made, and it's literally made for children. And it's good.
Y7. It is made for 7-year-old, and it's amazing.
Dude, they kill like kind of a lot of people in that show, though. Like,
they just don't show it, but it's like, it happens.
Like, your brain puts all that together pretty easily. I'm not going to complain because I love it.
It's required viewing material for Star Wars fans.
Absolutely.
So I'm not trying to gatekeep. You're still a real Star Wars fan if you haven't seen Rebels. It is on Disney Plus. If you get the chance, I would recommend watching it. You're going to fall in love with some great characters. Yeah, no gatekeeping. Sorry.
We've got another game. We've got another game coming out. And I want to talk about kind of, we'll spend just a little bit of time on this because there's so little known about this game that the only information we have is the developing studio and that it's a Star Wars FPS, so first-person shooter. The only information I've been able to find about this next game is that they don't even have a name for it yet. It's just it's literally just Respawn's Star Wars first-person shooter. That's all we know about it. And that's
all we know.
There's a few different people who, like, they have, like, the director. Peter Hirschman is the director for that one. I don't even know who that is, but I'm just reading it off the article there. And he's
Peter Hirschman. Come on, dude.
Dude beats me, man. Apparently, he has previously worked on a huge number of Star Wars games, including the original LucasArts Battlefront titles, multiple LEGO Star Wars games, and The Force Unleashed, as well as shooters like Medal of Honor and Mercenaries Playground of Destruction. So that's actually kind of a good sign, because that means the director for this actually has some experience in some of those Star Wars games that we really, really love.
But a lot of those games are older.
They're very old, yes. So hopefully...
It has been over a decade since the original Battlefront titles came out.
That's true. They old. They really old. Those are like Xbox originals.
I still have a copy somewhere, I think. I think it's an antique now. I should keep it.
You should keep that bad boy. Frame it. But that's kind of all we have about that right now, which is kind of a bummer because I love Battlefront. One of the modes that we had on the newest version of Battlefront 2, which is actually what I wanted to play when we got into that whole debacle about EA being a bunch of bag of dicks, is that I love the co-op feature where it's 4 people against the computers. It is a PvE mode, but it's easy. And it never really gets to the point where it's that hard. I mean, you lose around every once in a while, but it's not that hard.
So, real quick, some games that Respawn worked on. They are responsible for putting out Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order in conjunction with EA. They also worked on Apex Legends, which is a great game. Medal of Honor Above and Beyond, that was in 2020. And they also did all of the Titanfall games. So,
I never played Titanfall.
Not a huge repertoire, but relatively successful games. So
games that are well known, for sure. Absolutely.
Games that are well known. Let's see. The next one on the list is Bit Reactor's Star Wars strategy game. And I mean, again, this is another one of those things where I want to tear my hair out. We have so little information about these games. I don't know if you remember the days when Star Wars 1313 was in development and everyone was talking about it, and then it just died. I've been hurt too many times, and I'm afraid this is happening again.
Yeah.
I'm afraid that they're giving us just as little information as possible so that if these projects don't make it off the ground, that they can just kill them and no one will notice. Well, I get a notice. I'm here and I'm a human being and I love Star Wars and I just want to play these games.
Absolutely. My biggest peeve with this is that they just label it a strategy game, and the directors that are working on this have been working on games like XCOM, so it's like more turn-based games, but there's no information to say that these are actually also going to be turn-based games. That would just be an inference, like, oh, the director worked on one, so let's work on the other. If this was a Star Wars real-time strategy game, I would lose my mind. That would be so cool.
Because the last real-time strategy game we had was Empire at War, which in the modding community is still actively being played by I would say a large player base considering how old of a game it is. I have the gold edition, so if you ever want to play anything...
I believe I have it on Steam as well, so...
Yeah.
I mean, it had some of the best content. I remember when they came out with the expansion pack for that. I played so much as the Forces of Corruption, the Zon Consortium,
I believe
it was.
Cool.
They introduced... That was the first time they introduced the Mass Driver weapon, and it was really, really fun because you could just pilot these ships that were like kind of middle-sized class frigates, but they had like 4 mass driver cannons per ship, and they were relatively low unit costs. So you would just field a bunch of these. The mass drivers would go right through shields because it's like shooting a projectile at a lightsaber. Essentially, it doesn't work because then it just turns it into slag, and it's still coming.
Turns it into slag.
And you could just if you could micro this well, you would be able to knock out everything, like shields, weapons, or like usually like you'd knock out like engines and like proton torpedoes first, because then their like big damage dealers were gone. You'd lose a few ships.
And then they can't escape.
Yeah, you'd lose a few ships, but it would usually be a really, really good trade. And then it was nice for taking out the space stations as well, because if you could get a few of those in and take out the hangar first, they couldn't launch bombers to like strike back at you, and the bombers just wreck your ships. So if you could do that quickly, guaranteed win every time.
And it was awesome. It was so fun. So I don't know if you remember this, but the same day I bought the Empire at War Gold Edition on Steam, my motherboard for my old computer went out. So I literally haven't played it since I purchased it again. We may have to bust that out and play it on stream a little bit.
That'd be pretty cool.
I'd
be super down for that.
Yeah. If it did end up being a turn-based strategy game, I think that'd be really fun. Turn-based games look really interesting to me, even though I've never gotten into XCOM. Warhammer 40,000 Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, which is such a dorky and lame name. Oh my gosh. It's like, oh my gosh, guys, just make a shorter title. It's not that hard. Anyway, you play as the Grey Knights, and it looks awesome, and I really want to play it. And it's only on PC. But if we got a Star Wars game that looked like that, with like lots of customization and something to hit that dopamine button. I need it. And we've always loved real-time strategy games. So if it was a good real-time strategy game, I'd be like, cool, you won't see me for 6 months. Like, I'm going to come out looking like an albino because I haven't seen the sunlight in so long.
Yeah, nobody needs to touch grass anymore. If it's a good game, it's fine.
The sun!
Pretty much. I'm looking forward to that in whatever form it might take. Again, as long as it comes out on Xbox and I can earn achievements for it, I will probably play it all the way through multiple times. So that's going to be really, really
for sure.
I think one of the biggest titles that we're really, really looking forward to is Star Wars Eclipse. This is going to be a crazy time. I don't know what we're going to be actually looking at about this. First of all, the title is amazing. If you're a Star Wars fan, again, I'm trying not to be a gatekeeper, so let's provide a little bit of background, a little bit of lore for you guys. The Eclipse is a massive Star Destroyer. Andrew, do you know who the Eclipse's Star Destroyer, or whose flagship that is?
I thought it was Palpatine's for a while.
Ding, ding, ding. So the Eclipse is, if you watch Return of the Jedi, it is that giant ship that just like it's on the outskirts of the Death Star, the second Death Star, and it is the one that gets speared by an additional Star Destroyer and blows up.
Nope.
Or is it the other way around?
You're thinking the wrong ship. That is the Executor. That is Darth Vader's flagship.
Oh,
the Eclipse is a Super Star Destroyer that has a Death Star laser on the front of it. Also, this game is not in that era. So, just FYI.
Why would you name it that then?
I'm really sorry to burst your bubble. So, I have a little bit more information on
this. This shows you guys how little I know about these games coming out.
I have watched and read every piece of news that has come out on Star Wars Eclipse. So I'm talking a solid 15 minutes of research, guys. You can't even believe the level I'm at. I am going to have an aneurysm. There is so little information about this game. It's driving me nuts. They release an absolute banger of a trailer. I'm talking the old Republic MMO trailers, which are better than the new movies. Just going to say it. That's how good they are. They're amazing. The fight cinematography is it's so good. The Star Wars Eclipse is on that level. It's a beautiful trailer in 4K with all these different things, and you see the expressiveness of the Jedi Order that comes with the High Republic era. We could do a whole podcast on the High Republic books because I've read all of them, and I'm going through them again, especially since they're releasing more. I'm a huge fan. I
need to get into that era. I haven't read any of those yet. I'm still working on the Horus Heresy series. So I'm so behind.
I have taken a big break from the Horus Heresy series. You know, I took a break at like book 35. Insane. I'm like,
it's such a long series.
I don't even know what's happening in this series. Don't distract me. I'm talking. So there was a brief period where Star Wars Eclipse was it's in early development right now, and at some point there were rumors going around that it basically had stopped development entirely because, I believe, of staffing issues. I don't have a verifiable source on that, so we are in rumor and speculation territory, people. Please don't go spreading this like gospel truth. But I'm going to talk about it as if it is gospel truth. Anyway, so they had these issues with staffing, and the game, people were saying it wasn't going to come out till 2026. That's too long. That's too long. You can't have that good of a trailer and then be like, oh, it's going to come out 4 years from now. It's like, how did you get that footage then? Like, did you just make a little animated movie?
That's what we spent all the time on, is making the footage. Yeah. We have no game yet.
It was like, yeah, we basically made a movie and not a game, so you could get really hyped about a game that's, according to the website, as of this afternoon, still in early development. We don't know what it's going to look like. So this is being developed by Quantic Dream. I follow their Twitter account, and within the last month or two, they did have a job posting that seemed to be directly for the Star Wars Eclipse project. I think the studio is not big enough to work on more than one game at a time, but the games they do work on are very well received. We see games like Detroit Become Human as an example of that. That's, I think, a PlayStation exclusive. I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. Detroit Become Human looks so boring. I get that, it's a very cerebral game. It really makes you think, but it looks boring as heck. And if I have a Star Wars game where I have to press a button to pick up a glass of water or something, I'm gonna actually have that aneurysm, and I'll die. I'll just die. I think it's fair to say we expect a higher octane, more action out of a Star Wars movie than press X to open the door, press X or press X to twist the knob, press X to push the door open. It's that is almost the level of granularity we're talking about coming out of Detroit Become Human.
Well, and the funny thing is people love those. Those are more narrative. Those are 99% narrative driven stories, right? You are walking along with the character as a story is being told, and people love that. It's not my cup of tea. I don't like those stories. I'm right there with you. But a lot of people do. So if you do like that style of game, hey, go for it. I'm right there with you, though. If they make a Star Wars game in the same style, I will be a little upset. And comparing that to the trailer, which I don't even know if I've watched, but if I haven't watched it, I need to watch it. If I have watched it, I need to rewatch it. It just doesn't.
I'll retweet it.
That doesn't sound like it would line up with. You want your trailer to set reasonable expectations for the experience.
Yes. And if we get a Detroit Become Human style game with a Star Wars skin, my expectations have not been tempered to play that game because the scale of this game is massive. The only things they say you can do, this is according to their website, is that you can play as a multitude of species, and it's during the High Republic era, and that your actions will have consequences. I'm not even kidding. That's all they say. It's that could mean anything. Come on.
Well, and the next game we're going to be talking about as well is going to be that covers all of those bases in that next game.
Yes.
So you're we have that already.
Yeah. So to put a sweet little angry bow on Star Wars Eclipse, we know nothing. It might come out in 2024. It might come out in 2026. All I know is it's not coming out next year. So got to make sure nothing kills me by then.
Survive just a few more years.
Take us away to the next game. I need to lower my blood pressure a little bit.
Coming up next here, guys, is one of my favorite titles I've ever played. This is a remake, so keep that in mind here, guys. We are going to see a Knights of the Old Republic remake. I am so excited about this because that is something that I have just absolutely gone crazy about. This is going to be a full remake of the entire game, so that's going to be pretty cool. It looks like it's going to be on PS5 and PC, so that's good that it's going to be on PC because I guess this is not going to be on Xbox. So let me see. EA's, I'm just going to read some of the article for you guys as well, because if you guys aren't seeing this, we can get that information over to you. EA's separate Star Wars The Old Republic MMO is ongoing, but Knights of the Old Republic story-focused single-player RPG style was riveting nearly 2 decades ago and should stand the test of time when the remake is ready to launch. Them's fighting words.
What did I say during our Halo episode? If you capture fans at a young age and you enthrall them early, they will be fans for life.
And we are seeing that cycle play itself out because the footage they have for this is a hooded Revan with a battle-scarred mask and that red lightsaber going across the screen. If you don't know who Darth Revan is, it is probably one of the most compelling characters in Star Wars Legends. I believe he's no longer canon. I don't think there's anything in the new... I haven't... He gets referenced as a legend in other materials, I think maybe once. So he's not confirmed. But Correct. It's one of the coolest characters to ever grace the stage of Star Wars, and being in an RPG game, you do get those classic light side or dark side endings, and you get to see the character develop in some pretty sweet ways.
Honestly, this could be really cool to really inspire the next generation of Star Wars fans, because it sounds like they're very similar to the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. They're not just putting a 4K skin on it, they're actually redoing everything. Whether or not that means it's going to be a different story, maybe there'll be more story options. The story is good.
It's
mind
very
you. It's
good.
one of the it's one of the first games to have like, oh, you can assemble a party like you would do in like a D&D campaign, and boy, let me tell you what, they may not all make it. I remember in Knights of the Old Republic 2, where there's a character almost at the very beginning of the story where if you don't play your cards exactly right, you just miss out on this character entirely and you end up killing her. Where's that one? Where's that?
You
Was
thinking
Juhani
Juhani was number one? Yeah. If you
number one? Thank
when
you.
you encounter her on not Dantooine,
Dantooine.
Dantooine, yeah. Sorry, I
Yeah,
was thinking
Dantooine.
Dathomir there for a second. Dathomir's the literally opposite aesthetic.
Oh,
Um,
right. Yeah, she's
Dantooine,
not a Night Sister. Yeah.
yeah, Dantooine. She's a Cathar, so
Yeah.
she's basically a cat lady. So for all of you out there wearing whiskers and ears on your headphones, this is the character for you. But if you play it incorrectly and you don't have the charisma, she is like in the middle of transition to the dark side, and if you don't convince her that she needs to come back to the light, you basically kill her. So spoiler
have
to
to
a
kill
two,
her.
yeah, she's terrorizing the local like ruins essentially, which is like right next to a Jedi enclave. So you have to do something about it. You can't just like let her go, or she's gonna like keep killing people.
Well, and she attacks you. She doesn't give you the option.
Yeah, she's like, screw you, I'm so powerful, blah blah blah. And then you're like, I'm actually a Sith Lord, but you don't know that yet, and I don't know that yet.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for this. Darth Revan's
Spoilers.
yeah, I know, spoilers for a two-decade old game, but Darth Revan's one of my favorite characters. Let's give you guys a little
So
bit
good.
more lore as well. Lore. Darth Revan has his iconic mask, and the reason that mask is important is twofold. It's for lore purposes and it's for function as well. So you don't know what Revan looks like. That is on purpose. So it makes it when you are playing through this RPG, you get to decide what Revan looks like. Whatever your character looks like, that is canon in that moment. Really, really cool option. Second, the lore behind the mask is that Darth Revan in the Jedi Mandalorian Wars was so good at killing Mandalorians that he basically got a Mandalorian-style Jedi mask because the Mandalorians respected his combat prowess so much. They're like, you're really good at killing people.
I thought that was the Mask of Mandalore.
I don't specifically remember, and maybe it's my old man brain, but I don't specifically remember if it is the Mask of Mandalore.
So the Mask of Mandalore.
It is a Mandalorian mask, though.
Yeah, so the Mask of Mandalore is the Legend's equivalent of the Darksaber.
Ooh, what if they brought Revan in? What if they made the Mask of Mandalore canon, and he got an opportunity to interact with the Darksaber?
I would poop my pants. I just straight up poop my pants.
That'd be so cool. I don't know in what situation he would do that, because there's obviously like a lot of tradition behind the Darksaber, and it makes its way around so much. But essentially, like with the thousands of years that this piece of this relic weapon has existed, like, dude, yeah, put it in as many people's hands as possible. It's the rule of cool. You're only adding to the weapon's like historical value. So that's my call to you guys. If you guys are watching this and you're part of the development team for Knights of the Old Republic remake, put the Darksaber in there. Do it. Make it canon somehow, some way. Do it. Validate the presence of Revan in the storyline. And yes, give us options so that we can do whatever we want. So we can have a light side or a dark side ending, but have a predetermined ending. Make this canon again. Like it's my favorite content of the entire Star Wars universe is the Old Republic, specifically the Revan era.
It's very compelling. Revan is actually the father of Satele Shan, who is like the Jedi Grand Master from the MMORPG.
So. Because Revan and Bastila have a child, essentially. Back when it was like mostly just slightly frowned upon, I believe, but it wasn't like against the Jedi Code to like have children.
Yeah, so the Old Republic and the High Republic show basically the degrading of the Jedi Order, but so by the time we get to the prequels, the Jedi Order has just slowly, like over time, just slowly constricted what Jedi are allowed to do. So like in High Republic, there's a huge different expression in the way the Force works. And by extension, you see this in the way their garments look. They're a little bit more fancy, not austere, more royal looking, honestly. You see this in the design of their lightsabers, and we see the same thing in the Revan era, where Jedi are really allowed to express themselves,
which is so cool.
And they have a lot looser of a grasp on what it means to how they deal with attachments and things like that.
This is where the Jedi peaked, and then we get to see an eventual downslope to the warrior monks, which is essentially what they are in episodes 1, 2, and 3.
And I mean, this is my own personal theory, because by the time the prequel movies come around and the Jedi are so dogmatic in their teachings and they don't have really any grace at all for the members of their order, that is why they fail. Because really what that comes down to is they don't understand the Force. They think the Force is only to be understood in one way, and because of that, they essentially railroad themselves, put on blinders, and are completely blind and deaf to the threats growing around them.
You know that meme where it's like something will resolve itself really, really quick, and it's like written by George Lucas. Literally, you could have finished like the third movie, and like Obi-Wan could have just been like, "Hey, Anakin, we know that you're in a relationship with Padme," and they're like, "Cool, we're gonna keep you around." Movie ends, written by George Lucas. There you go. Yeah. Boom, done. Yeah. Like that's how simple it would have been. Because Obi-Wan knows, and like, which is kind of a bummer, because when you get so much detail and backstory, especially in the Clone Wars of like Obi-Wan and his relationships, then you're like, oh, dude, you realize you're like, oh, he would have got it. Like he would have understood, which makes episode 3 even more tragic.
It does. It really hurts at the end. Oh, yeah, if Obi-Wan had just been like, or if the Jedi Order had been like, hey, we know about this, I mean, they would have had to find out in the first place. Obi-Wan had suspicions towards the end, and you see that in the Clone Wars. Mm-hmm. However, if the Jedi Order had found out and had just said, hey, congrats, you're going to be a dad, let's throw you a baby shower. Okay, written and directed by George Lucas, we're done.
But again, that does not make for good storytelling, so easy solutions are boring. We want lightsaber fights. All right, guys, there are several other projects that are out there. We're not going to cover all of them today, just in the interest of time.
We'll cover because there's no info on them either.
Yes, we just spent a lot of time telling you guys there's not a lot of info about this, but we're excited.
Can you read just the headers real quick of the last two I think we didn't cover?
Absolutely. So we've got a few different projects that we'll hopefully cover in more episodes once we have more information. We have a Star Wars project coming out of the Ubisoft Center, and then we have the Skydance New Media Star Wars project as well. Again, we don't know much about this other than the companies that they are associated with, but when we find out, we will let you guys know. We're very, very excited to pass all that information along to you. Thank you guys so much for listening in here today and taking your time out to be here and listen to us. Please participate in the conversation here, guys. Leave comments, send us send us comments on Twitter, all of that fun stuff. We want to hear from you guys. We want to hear about different topics, your response to the things we talk about. If you have information, you're like, hey, I heard something about Eclipse that they didn't mention in the episode. We would love to know that. So that way we can cover that. And if you send us that information, we'd love to be like, hey, listener A from YouTube over here posted this. We might even be able to throw in some screenshots for you as well. We want to keep this a community effort in all of the different context that we talk about. So if you guys want to see us, you guys can find us on Twitter at Talk Tatooine. If you guys want to see the video version of this podcast, you guys can find us on YouTube at Talk About Tatooine. We are also on several different podcast platforms right now. So we are on Anchor, which is a subset of Spotify, so you can find us there. And we are looking into branching into other podcast platforms as well, once we get a little bit more momentum rolling with this, and we're able to get a little bit of listener support as well. Again, we are not funded right now, so we do this on our own time as working people who have...
for free.
So you guys can get as much out of us as possible. So right now, this is the biggest thing we ask for you guys right now is just watch the content, like, and subscribe. Leave those positive notifications or those positive reviews on those podcast platforms. That goes a super long way in helping us out. Hit that bell for notifications as well, so that way you guys don't miss anything. And a few episodes ago, I forgot to post one of our podcasts, and I can't even remember if that was a technical error or not. It might have been a user error, but one of those podcast episodes did.
We'll say it was posted. A technical error.
Yeah, we'll say it's a technical error. One of those episodes didn't get posted. You guys, if you guys had notifications on, you'd be like, hey, why is that not being posted? And then there's me who's panicking behind the scenes trying to get it all loaded up in between hours at my real job as well. But we just want to make sure that we're staying up to date with you guys as well. We really, really love all of the topics we talk about, and we know you guys too. Yeah. So we want to share as much as we can with you guys. So we want to be that podcast you come back to and you're excited to see show up on that feed every single week. We look forward to hearing from you, and until next time, may the Force be with you.
close your eyes.